Please be seated. Sorry, Ms. Shudawa. I'll just... Ms. Shudawa, before we commence, you must take an oath or an affirmation. Which would you prefer to take?
An affirmation.
Right. Thank you. Please stand and read out aloud the affirmation.
I, Shania Shediwala, sincerely declare and affirm that the evidence that I give to this commission shall be the truth, the whole truth.
Thank you, Ms. Shudawa. Please make yourself comfortable. Yes, Ms. Seward.
May it please the Commission. Ms Shediwala, you are currently the Executive Director of Finance and Procurement with the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries.
Yes.
And you received a summons to appear at this Royal Commission. And accompanying that summons was a request for a statement with a list of questions. And you prepared that statement?
Yes.
Now, there should be a copy of the statement in front of you. We turn to the back page. Should have your signature and the date of 31 August 2021.
Yes.
And if you turn back one page, you can see the last paragraph number should be 112.
Yes.
Now, is it correct you've identified a typographical error in paragraph 87?
Yes.
And is that error your title name?
That's correct.
So if we move to the middle of the paragraph, it says, in my role as Executive Director. Can you just say what the correct title is?
Should be Executive Director of Finance and Procurement.
And we can cross out and payroll at the end of that. Were there any other errors you noted in your statement?
Oh, that I've noted.
That statement, which has the number DLG.0001.0012.0007, is that true and correct to the best of your information, knowledge and belief?
I believe so.
Attend to the statement.
Thank you, Ms. Seward. The statement with that amendment will be an exhibit with the number as articulated by Ms. Seward. Yes, Mr. Sharp.
Ms. Shediwala, you've been the Chief Finance Officer of the Department of Racing, Gaming and Liquor from 2017?
Of the Department of Local Government.
Yes, sorry, that's my mistake. And you've also been the Chief Finance Officer of the Gaming and Wagering Commission from 2017?
Since late 2017, yes.
Now, in paragraph 12 of your witness statement, you say that within this position, I am appointed as CFO of all statutory authorities within the DLGSC portfolio. When you say I am appointed, who is appointing you?
The Director General as the accountable authority.
So the Director General is the accountable authority of the department, appoints you as the CFO of the department. Is that right?
Yes.
And who is appointing you as the CFO of the Gaming and Wagering Commission?
I would imagine the Chair as the accountable authority, which is also the Director General.
When you say you imagine, how were you informed, or how did you come to believe that you held the position of Chief Finance Officer of the Gaming and Wagering Commission?
Following the amalgamation of the various departments that came together and a number of their statutory authorities, I guess the way that the position and the role evolved, a lot of things, I guess, were a process of discovery to understand which entities reported through to whom.
So is it correct to say that your appointment as CFO of the Gaming and Wagering Commission was an inherent part of your appointment to your present position at the department?
Yes.
Sorry, Ms. Shudawa. You're just very quiet. Would you be able to perhaps move forward to the desk? I don't know if that will help or not, and just speak up.
Yes, sorry.
Have regard to the fact that everybody needs to hear, including anyone down the back.
Sure.
Now, paragraph 13 of your witness statement, you identify your title as an Executive Director of Finance and Procurement.
Yes.
That's your current title.
Yes.
Does that mean that you are now part of the corporate executive for your department?
My position has always been a member of the corporate executive of the department.
And who do you report to?
The Director General. Until recently.
Until recently? And
There's been structural changes to the department more recently with the appointment of the new Director General. So there's been a restructure of the DLGC.
And who do you report to under that restructure?
I now report to the Deputy Director General, who leads the corporate services, various corporate services functions.
Now, at paragraph 20 of your witness statement, you state that there's no prescribed allocation of time with respect to each of the finance roles that you hold within the department's portfolio. But as a matter of practice, are you able to give a division of your time between those different roles?
It would be different at different times depending on the requirement. So in a standard month, specifically in relation to the Gaming and Wagering Commission, I would typically not spend very much time except for perhaps reviewing the monthly financial reports that we would be tabling at different times, say when it comes to perhaps finalising the annual report or getting involved with audit-related discussions. Or indeed the Royal Commission, I've obviously spent a great deal more time.
Call up pub.0016.0023.003 and go to page 48. So this is section 57 of the Financial Management Act, and that act identifies in subsection 2 that the Chief Finance Officer has certain responsibilities to the accountable authority. And while you've been Chief Finance Officer of the department, the accountable authority of the department is the Director General, is that correct? And so that's been Mr. Ward and is now Ms. Chopping, is that right?
That's correct.
And in your capacity as the Chief Finance Officer of the Gaming and Wagering Commission, who do you understand to be the accountable authority?
The Chair of the Commission.
And do you accept that you have those responsibilities which are set out at subsection 2 of section 57?
Yes.
And specifically looking at paragraph A of subsection 2, that you have a responsibility to the accountable authority for the preparation of financial information to facilitate the discharge of statutory reporting obligations of the agency. Do you accept that?
Yes.
And do you accept that that financial information should be accurate as an aspect of that obligation or requirement? And paragraph C refers to a responsibility to provide advice concerning the financial implications of and financial risks to the agency's current and projected services. Do you accept that you owe that responsibility to the accountable authority for the department and the Gaming and Wagering Commission?
Yes. Turning
then to the internal audit function in respect of the Gaming and Wagering Commission. You deal with that at paragraph 31 of your witness statement. And you state, to the best of your knowledge, the GWC did not have a separate internal audit committee at all relevant times. However, they are currently being incorporated within the DLGSC's Audit and Risk Committee's terms of reference. That's your statement.
Mm-hmm.
So is it your understanding that since September 2017, the GWC did not have its own internal audit committee?
Yes, that's correct.
And you've referred to the terms of reference of the DLGSC in paragraph 32 and observed that there would be some aspects of the GWC's operations that are subject to the review, but not comprehensively.
I'm not sure that I state comprehensively. The department's terms of reference currently do not specifically state that the GWC is within its remit. My opinion, however, is that in the department providing all of the services to the GWC, and to the extent that the department's services are audited, either internally or externally, that it is covered through an internal audit function.
And you state in paragraph 31 that the GWC are currently being incorporated within the department's Audit and Risk Committee's terms of reference.
Yes.
When you say they're currently being incorporated, what is the current status of that incorporation?
It has been an ongoing discussion for all of the last financial year. It's obviously a new requirement under Treasurer's Instructions 1201 around having an independent or internal audit committee. The method through which that should be delivered to all of the statutory authorities that the department services and covers has been a process of negotiation with the various boards, CEOs, etc. So the method through which to deliver that in the best and most efficient way has been a process that I think we are, as at the last internal audit committee meeting, I believe we have come to a landing as to how that will be affected, and so consequently the terms of reference are, as I understand it, currently being amended.
And so when do you anticipate that the GWC will be incorporated within the terms of reference?
I understand it's a current action item for the governance area, and I believe it potentially will be tabled at the next meeting. I can't be certain of that though.
And when would the next meeting be?
I believe there is one scheduled either for late September or early October.
And have you been in discussions with the GWC itself about incorporating the GWC into that, into the terms of reference for the Audit and Risk Committee?
Have I been in discussion? No, I'm not responsible for governance and audit, no.
Have there been discussions between the department and the GWC?
Yes, as I understand it, yes.
And are you aware of whether the GWC is content with the proposed arrangements for their incorporation into the department's Audit and Risk Committee?
To the extent that representations have been made to our internal audit committee that they are content, I believe so, yes.
Turn then to your witness statement at paragraphs 48 and 49. This concerns your personal attendance at GWC meetings, and at paragraph 48 you say that you've only attended GWC meetings on 2 occasions. And the first occasion was approximately the second half of 2018 to introduce yourself, and the second occasion was very recently, which was the 27th of August 2021. And you state at paragraph 49 that you presented 2 papers to the GWC board at the request of the board, which was the monthly financial papers for July 2021 and the explanation of the GWC service fee. Call up GWC.0003.0014.0020. And can you show the second page at the same time, please? Is that the paper that you're referring to at paragraph 49 of your witness statement?
One of, yes.
That's the explanation of the GWC service fee paper?
Yes.
And apart from those 2 occasions when you've attended the GWC meetings, have you solely provided your advice to the GWC in writing through briefing papers and attached financial statements?
In the main, yes.
Have you provided it in another way? Or?
Just my introduction was obviously not a paper, but yes, other than that.
Other than those 2 times that you've been,
Yes.
your communications with them have been through your written briefing papers, is that correct?
Personally, yes. Members of my team, however, have attended on other occasions.
Call up pub.0004.0005.0107. Go to page 129, please. So Section 9 of the Gaming Wagering Commission Act deals with the funds of the Commission, and in subsection 2, paragraph A, states that an account called the Gaming and Wagering Commission account is to be established as an agency special purpose account under section 16 of the Financial Management Act. See that? And are you aware of whether an account has been established in accordance with that requirement?
Yes.
And is the account operated by departmental officers?
Yes.
And do they operate that pursuant to a delegation?
Yes.
And who conferred that delegation?
I prepare it and it is approved by the accountable authority.
So you've prepared the delegation and it was approved by the Director General, is that?
Yes. Yes.
And who are the departmental officers who operate the account?
I have a team of staff that would operate various aspects of the account, if you like. I have a team that's responsible for example, paying invoices, recording revenues. I have accountants that are responsible for ensuring that the expenses and or revenues are appropriately documented and allocated. So numerous officers.
Turn now to ask you some questions about how the department calculated the service charge to the GWC in the time since you've been appointed as the Chief Finance Officer. Since you have been the Chief Finance Officer, GWC has not had its own staff, is that correct?
Yes.
And so,
Don't believe the GWC ever had its own staff, as far as I understand.
and so the GWC depends on the department to produce its budget papers.
Yes.
And during the time that you've been CFO, the service charge appears in both the department's budgets as a revenue item that it would receive from the GSC, is that right?
Yep.
And it also appears as an expense item in the GWC's budget as an expense that it pays to the department, is that right?
Yes.
And is it the case that when the department calculates the service charge for budgetary purposes, it is calculating a figure that will be used in both the department's budget and the GWC's budget in the ways that I've just described?
Essentially, yes.
I'll call up again GWC.0003.0014.0019. And if we go to page 20, the second page of that document, so perhaps we could start with the first page, which identifies the purpose of this paper is to note how the professional, for the GWC to note how the professional services fee is calculated. Okay. And see at the foot of the page, of that first page, it's further noted that $28.75. Sorry, perhaps I should go back to the start of that current situation. The current situation identifies that just prior to the machinery of government changes in 2017, the former Department of Racing, Gaming and Liquor undertook some work to identify an appropriate cost allocation mechanism between gaming and liquor expenses. The review identified effectively 70-30 split, and it was further noted that, and then we go to the top of the next page, 28.75% of RGL costs are attributable to provide support for the GWC. So this is an explanation to the Gaming and Wagering Commission about how the departmental service fee to the GWC was calculated in 2018-2019.
Yes.
And this explanation is being provided in August 2021.
Yes.
And to your knowledge, is this the first time that the GWC has been informed about the use of the 28.75% figure as a basis for calculating that charge in 2018-19?
I believe so, yes.
Call up GWC.0002.0016.0228 and go straight to page 212. Sorry, not 12, page 212. This is the budget paper which you prepared dated 16 March 2018. Do you see that?
Yes.
And if we go to the next page, there's a statement. Can we show the next page as well, sorry? Okay, so just to confirm that you prepared that paper, do you see that? Do you agree?
My staff prepared the paper, but I approved and signed it, yes.
And you see that on the first page, there's a title, Recoup to DLGSC, and the explanation is recoup rate is increased from 4.027 million to 4.14 million by $113,220 to be able to support the commission.
Yes.
And the statement here does not explain that the 28.75% figure has been used as the basis for calculating that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And is there any reason why that explanation was not included in this budget paper?
I guess my staff at the time were very much learning the requirements of the new department and its portfolio, given the sudden changes introduced on the 1st of June 2017. At the time, the officer involved in preparing this paper was not a former Racing, Gaming and Liquor Department of Racing, Gaming and Liquor officer, and so they essentially utilised a very similar template from previous years and provided very similar information to previous years. So to the extent that that was the level of explanation provided previously, we maintained that level of information.
We can then turn to the witness statement at paragraph 75. At paragraph 75, you've identified your understanding that there was a 30% allocation of RGL's budget to racing and gaming functions, or perhaps I haven't put that quite precisely enough, but you've identified the 30-70 split, and that you've got an understanding there's a 30-70 split of the Department of Racing, Gaming and Liquor's spending on liquor and non-liquor activities.
Yes.
What led you to form the understanding that there was a 30-70 split that was used?
We located documentation, including an email exchange between the former CFO and the Department of Treasury that justified that split.
So can we call up GWC.0007.009.0015? And is this the email that you're referring to? Perhaps you can show the next page as well, operator.
Yes.
And can we go to the email from Mr. Ng to Mr. Kuchera dated 9th of March 2017? Have you had the opportunity to review these emails overnight?
Yes.
As regards... Sorry, operator, can you drop that down? Just let's focus on page 003. Looking at the email dated the 9th of March from Mr. Kuchera to Mr. Ng, do you accept that that email is an email seeking a basis for splitting the costs between liquor and non-liquor activities for reporting purposes?
Yes.
And do you accept that that email was not intended as giving a basis for the split of the service charge? Sorry, I didn't put that well. Do you accept that the intention of Mr. Ng in responding to that email was not to give a formula for setting the recoupment fee or the service charge, but was for the purpose of allowing reporting under the COFOG classification system?
I'm not sure the witness can say what someone else's intention was. Could be phrased slightly differently. But
Yes, rephrase that, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. Do you understand Mr. Kuchera's request to be a request about classification of spending?
Yes.
And Mr. Kuchera's request is not a request about how the department will calculate its service charge in the future. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that, but there is an inherent link between what the department spends its money on, or the Gaming and Wagering Commission for its Gaming and Wagering Commission functions and or racing functions relate to those expenses. So they are inherently linked.
So apart from this email chain, were there other materials or documents that you relied upon in setting the 30-70 split for future calculation, or for calculation in 2018, 2019?
For the calculation in 2018-19, we used a subset of the 30%, as I explained in the other board paper, the 28.75%. We use that to the extent that we can see that in prior years, that is the level of percentage that is charged. And again, for maintaining consistency to what we understood to be the practice, we maintain that level of charging.
Call up GWC.0007.0009.0016. Is this one of the other documents that you took into account in setting the 30-70 split?
I can't recall specifically that I looked at this document at the time, but it would have justified some of the percentage split, yes.
Looking at this document, would you consider that a more appropriate split would have been a 28-72 split?
We currently charge 28.75% to the GWC.
Yes, although this document looks at the full cost recovery of the GWC and the Racing Penalties Appeals Tribunal and calculates that as being 28.09%.
We actually, in setting the 28.75 in 18-19, we considered the prior 3 years, which included 2015-16, 2016-17 and 2017-18, so more recent data, and took the average of those 3 years, and it was calculated to be 28.75.
And how did you determine the split of 28.75 and 1.25% between the Gaming and Wagering Commission and the Racing Penalties Appeals Tribunal?
Based on that average of the 3 years prior.
Turning then to the witness statement at 79, please, operator. So perhaps I should start at 78. So at 78, Ms. Shedawala, you identify the 2018-2019 financial year calculation is based on 28.75% of the budgeted total cost of the RGL division. Is that correct? And then in paragraph 79, you identify that for 2019-2020, it was decided to not increase it at all because the CPI was so low. Is that right?
Yes.
So, sorry, I didn't perhaps frame that properly. You had considered a CPI increase and then decided not to make any increase because CPI was so low.
Yes.
In 2021, and this is at paragraph 8 of your witness statement, you've noted that there's been a material increase, you say by 11%, in the GWC's output in terms of audit, inspection and investigation. And that leads to an increase in the budget recommended of 5% above CPI, is that right?
5%.
Oh, so when you say 5% fee increase being above CPI?
Being above CPI.
Oh, so it's a 5% increase, which is greater than CPI?
Yes.
And in the following year, 2021, 2022, the budget is for a further 5% increase. At paragraph 88 of your witness statement, you say that in recommending increases to the service fee charge as articulated above, you're referring to those paragraphs I've just taken you to.
Yes.
The rationale for this recommendation was provided by me to the Director General, who is also the chair of the GWC board.
Yes.
So your evidence is that you've submitted these as the basis for the changes to the Director General.
In the first instance, yes.
As regards the increases that have been made in 2019-20 and in the last 2 financial years, is it fair to say that the consequence of those changes, those 2 5% increases, is that the 28.75% figure as a basis for calculating the service charge has been abandoned?
It's not so much abandoned as, I guess, how we've utilised it is to rebase the fee when the DLGSC came into existence, separate to the former Department of Racing, Gaming and Liquor. Since then, we've tried to take a measured approach to any fee increases.
And at paragraph 80, you've identified that the department has assessed GWC's output in terms of audit, inspection and investigations as representing 40% of the Division of Racing, Gaming and Liquor's output. So it's fair to say that if that 40% figure does fairly reflect the proportion of output, then the charge that's being made to the GWC is a substantial undercharge for the actual cost of the service?
Yes.
Sorry, say that again. Can I just have that question again?
So if it is correct that 40% of the division of RGL's, Racing Gaming Liquors Division's costs are going to GWC services, if that's the correct figure, 40%, then the current charge, which has been adjusted a couple of times from 28.75%, is a substantial undercharge.
Yeah. If it's 40%.
If it's 40%. If it's 40%, yes.
And who knows? Because 30% was a guess.
Sorry, the 40% relates to the KPI output produced by the division for the Gaming Wagering Commission's functions. So insofar as that captures the activity performed on behalf of the GWC, 40% was the output.
That's only part of the service fee, isn't it?
It's entirely separate to the service fee, so that captures the output, the actual the services that are delivered on behalf of the Gaming and Wagering Commission.
But there wouldn't necessarily be a direct relationship between the cost and the outputs in the KPIs, would there? I mean, inspections and audits vary enormously in terms of time and...
But insofar as, I guess, we're recovering a fee for delivering a certain output for an entity, I would imagine that they should be directly linked for the functions delivered.
So when you've said at 77 that the service charge relates to the budgeted total costs of the services of the RGL division within the DLGSC, it's not currently in your assessment a direct proportion relationship, is it?
The distinction being made is between the budgeted cost versus the actual cost. So insofar as we have to set the fee for the following year in advance, we have to rely on budgeted figures for the division, yes. So to the extent that the actual differs from that at the end of the financial year, there would be a discrepancy.
just to reframe the question, you're not currently setting the fee based on your current understanding of the proportion of DLG services that are being provided to the GWC, are you? So currently, your view is that 40% of the division's services are being provided to the GWC, but you're not charging them 40% of the division's costs.
40% of the division's output. Yes. And no, we are not charging them 40% of the division's costs. But that's not the distinction I'm making in the paragraph. The distinction I'm making in the paragraph is the difference between budgeted costs versus actual costs at the end of the financial year.
But it's the case, isn't it, that you are charging at the end of the financial year, you're not making any variation between the budget and the
That's
actuals
correct.
at the moment?
Yes.
So the service charge which you set in 2018-2019 has effectively been subject to ad hoc adjustments since that time. Is that correct?
Sorry, which year?
So you set, at paragraph 78, you identify that in 2018-2019, you've used the 28.75% figure to calculate the service charge.
Yes.
And then since that time, you've made ad hoc adjustments to that figure to calculate the service charge for following years.
I've made recommendations for increases based on the increase in output delivered for the Gaming and Wagering Commission.
If you could call up PCRC.0004.008.002. Are you familiar with this document, Ms. Scherderweiler?
Yes.
If we look at the column, which is the 8th column, budget service charge as a percentage of the budget of DRGL expenditure, we can see that for 2018, it's 27.46%. You see that?
Yes.
For 2019, it's 30.1%. You see that?
Yes.
And for 2020, it's 28.86%.
Yes.
So essentially, the 28.75% figure was used in one financial year, but it's not being used consistently now, is it?
As I explained previously, we utilised it, I guess, to rebase the fee when the department was created, the DLGSC. Since then, we've applied a method of escalation in relation to either CPI or output-related increases, yes.
To make the adjustments annually on a basis that directly related to the amount of services provided, you would need a more detailed assessment of the resources that were going into the Gaming and Wagering Commission outputs than you presently have, wouldn't you?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Sorry, that wasn't well framed. Currently, you're relying upon the total audit inspection output numbers to look at whether or not you should be increasing the GWC service charge. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that is not necessarily a reliable indicator of the resources being used to provide the GWC with services, because you don't know the time taken for each of those audit, inspection, investigation processes, do you?
Yes.
So to be able to give a more accurate, to be able to make a more accurate assessment of the resources that are being used by the department, being provided by the department to the GWC, you would need a more accurate way of assessing the resources being used than you presently have. Is that correct?
Potentially, yes.
Or why potentially?
Well, I guess the current fee has been calculated in the absence of such information, but certainly to the extent that more accurate information will be available, that will be used.
Turning then to paragraph 82 of your witness statement, you say, to the best of your knowledge, you're not aware of the GWC ever requesting reconsideration of the amount of the fee applied, or that the GWC considered the amount of the fee applied to have been inappropriate.
Yes.
But it's only been since August of this year that the GWC has had the explanation about how the fee has been calculated in the last 3 financial years. That's correct, isn't it?
From me personally, yes. I was not aware whether they required further information or needed it.
Well, you're their CFO, aren't you? Why didn't you find out?
I'm not, as a matter of course, invited to the GWC meetings, to the board meetings. My understanding was with the current Director General and the former Director General on the board, I understood potentially that the information was being relayed around how the fee was being calculated.
So did you ever see any document which indicated it was?
No,
Did you ever make inquiries to see if it was?
no.
And is that because you're primarily concerned with being the department's CFO?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp.
If we could just return to GWC.0003.0014.0019. And show both pages, please. When you've referred in your witness statement to the increase by 11% and the 40% output number, does that reflect the table on the second page, that data? Is that what you're referring to?
Part of it, yes.
And so you accept that this is just a raw adding up of audit, inspection and investigation conducted by the department,
Yes.
and that it does not factor in the time taken for audit, inspection and investigations conducted by the department.
Correct.
So when we look at those figures, they suggest that in 2018-2019, the target for the Gaming Commission was at 28.72%, but the actuals were at 39.53%. Do you see that?
Yes.
But if it happened that the average time to perform audits, inspections and investigations for the GWC was half of the average time to perform audits, inspections and investigations for liquor, then in fact the resources that would actually be used would be half of that, so they'd be 20% rather than 40%, wouldn't they?
Yes. If there's a material difference in the time taken to produce the output, absolutely.
So if we can go then to the top of page 20 of Ms. Sudawala's witness statement. And you state there that the department is in fact providing a greater service output than GWC is being charged, that statement is based on the assumption that you can look at the raw numbers of audits, inspections and investigations to determine the relative output. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so if, as I suggested as a possibility, the average time for those things for the Gaming and Wagering Commission were half of the equivalent things for liquor, then it's not necessarily the case that the department is providing a greater service output that it's charging for.
Potentially not.
Going back then to the question of variations, you've given evidence that during the time you've been Chief Finance Officer, there's not been variations of the service charge. Sorry, I thought I'd cover that with you, but if I haven't covered it, I'll put the question to you again. During your time as the Chief Finance Officer, there hasn't been a variation to the budgeted service charge. So the actual service charge charged to the GWC has not been varied from the budgeted service charge. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And given that there may be a basis for thinking that there's been an increase in services provided to the GWC, why have you not varied the charge in accordance with that?
During the financial year? Sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
So you formed the view, based on those KPI numbers, that the services provided to the GWC have been greater than what was budgeted for. Why has the view been taken that there shouldn't be an increase in the actual service charge paid by the GWC because it's been given greater services, a greater number of services?
The calculation of the output figure is done following the end of the financial year and reporting the KPIs. So to the extent that that information was available, it informed the fee increase for the following year.
And is it correct, sorry, turning to another topic, the question of payment, is it correct that there's a monthly payment made from the Gaming and Wagering Commission to the department?
Yes.
And is there an invoice generated for that monthly payment?
Yes.
And who generates the invoice?
One of my staff members who's responsible for performing GWC financial functions.
And who receives the invoice? Where is it sent?
There's an annual purchase order developed based on the budgeted charge and the invoice is then receipted against it during the year.
Sorry, I'm asking, does the invoice go to the GWC?
No.
No. And so who within the department authorises the payment of that invoice?
I would authorise the annual purchase order, which is the approval that's needed for monthly invoices.
So is there any specific approval of the monthly payment?
Not once the purchase order is approved.
Turning then to paragraph 85 of your witness statement. This is a question about assessing value for money for this service charge. And you've stated that in your role as Executive Director of Finance and Procurement with the department and the CFO of the GFC, you're not in a position to take into account qualitative factors such as whether the department's service fee charge represents value for money for the services received by the GWC.
Yes.
Do you say that you're not able to make an assessment of value for money because you're essentially on both sides of the bargain?
No, I'm actually removed from the business area that performs those functions. So to the extent that the Commission believes that those functions are value for money, I'm not involved with the business area delivering those functions or the assessment for what the quality or level of output that the GWC expects and whether that represents value for money.
Isn't GWC's capacity to determine those issues in part at least dependent upon the financial information it receives? And if it's just told by that it's sort of the invoice is this much for the year, that there's a limit on the capacity for the GWC as well to determine what value for money it's getting.
I suppose I would imagine that the level of information they get from the relevant business area on the actual output that's being delivered for them, I would imagine that they would then be able to compare the cost versus the actual delivery of service. To the extent that I'm not actually involved in the business area that delivers that output, I can't make that judgment.
But as CFO, wouldn't you be responsible for when you received an invoice for services on behalf of the GWC to say there's not sufficient information in here to enable what services are being provided for this amount of money?
The basis on which I approve the invoice is that the budgeted fee has been approved by the GWC and the Minister. On that basis, I execute the approval of the invoice payment. The ongoing nature of service delivery from the department to the GWC, it's not sort of I would imagine it's not possible to make that judgment on a monthly basis.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp.
Turning then to the question of the MOU for financial counselling services, which is dealt with beginning at paragraph 93 of your witness statement. And I'll draw attention particularly to paragraph 95 of your witness statement, where you say that having considered the entry on page 77 of the department's annual report for 2018-2019, you can confirm that the sum of $500,000 identified for grants to individuals problem gambling in FY 2019 and FY 2020 is actually the sum of $500,000 that is paid to the Department of Communities. You say that you're not in a position to comment on whether the grants to individual problem gambling is an accurate description of that arrangement, and that to the best of your knowledge the department has retained the description applied by the former DRGL. Now, we looked earlier at your responsibilities under Section 57 of the Financial Management Act, and you agreed that your responsibilities include the accuracy of financial information. That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
And so it's your responsibility to ensure the department's annual report descriptions are accurate.
Yes.
And the description that's given here, grants to individuals problem gambling, the first part of that description is grants. That does not seem to be an appropriate description for funds which are being paid to the Department of Communities, does it?
I believe it is a grant based on the structure of the MOU.
And the second part of the description refers to problem gambling, and the MOU is concerned with financial counselling services. So I put it to you that that's not an accurate description of the use of the money or how the money is being applied. Do you agree?
I understood that to be financial counselling in relation to problem gambling, so I still believe it to be.
Have you undertaken any examination of the MOU to see if it refers to problem gambling at all?
The MOU doesn't specifically state, I believe, that it relates to problem gambling, only in relation to financial counselling. But I understood that to be in relation to problem gambling.
Do you consider that you've got sufficient doubt about the accuracy of that description that you should further investigate whether that is a correct and accurate description for future annual reports?
In relation to whether problem gambling remains in the title?
In regards to whether grants to individuals problem gambling is an appropriate description for the transfer of the funds pursuant to the MOU for the use in financial counselling by Department of Communities.
I think it certainly warrants a second look at the titling of it, but I am satisfied, having reviewed the MOU, that it's still a grant, yes.
Turning then to the question of the financial relationship between the department and the GWC, which is addressed in your witness statement beginning at paragraph 104. So you refer here to the fact that You refer here to it being a function of the role of the department to provide executive support to the GWC. And at 105, that the budget and financial reporting processes between the department and GWC, you say, facilitates a process of discussion and inquiry in relation to the financial aspects of the services provided by the department to the GWC and the services generally. And at paragraph 106, you say, in my view, the budget setting process also allows the GWC to interrogate and or raise questions to do with the service fee charge. But your evidence earlier, including at paragraph 83, at paragraph 83, what you state is that had the GWC ever raised any questions or concerns in relation to the service fee charge, then the matter would be escalated within the finance team for consideration and comment back to the GWC. So the reality is that this process, which you suggest facilitates a process of discussion and inquiry regarding the service fee, as a matter of practice, has not operated in that way, has it? Because there's only very recently been a detailed explanation of how the service fee is charged. Do you agree?
Again, from provided by myself, yes.
Provided by yourself, in that you're suggesting that prior to you explaining the 28.75% basis that someone else had, is that what you're suggesting?
I was not aware that the board was not aware. Again, I perhaps inappropriately relied on the fact that the current Director General and the former Director General formed part of the board. I understood in that we didn't actually vary the methodology until more recently, where an explanation was provided. I was of the understanding that the board perhaps had a prior knowledge of how the fee was calculated, and so I relied on that.
At paragraph 107 of your witness statement, you say that, in my view, it may also be of benefit to have the CFO attend GWC meetings, similar to the CFO attending the department's corporate executive. Is this a proposal that you've put forward and is being considered for implementation?
Not formally. I suppose there's been informal discussions or suggestions made to the former Director General in the past, but it's never necessarily been acted upon. And I guess I was being asked on options to improve the relationship, and to that extent, a similar relationship as the one that I have within the department would be helpful.
And at paragraph 110, you say that on the question of whether there should be a single CFO for the department and the Gaming and Wagering Commission, or separate CFOs, you suggest that in an ideal world there would be two separate CFOs. Obviously, your reference to an ideal world suggests that we don't live in an ideal world. What's the constraint that you see that prevents that from happening?
Machinery of government changes, I guess, were not initiated certainly by the department or the Gaming and Wagering Commission. They were changes that were decisions of government that are outside our control. As a result of that, I have many shared hats within the department and a number of its statutory authorities. And so absolutely best case scenario, every entity could have its own CFO to eliminate doubt around whose interests an individual is acting in.
And do you consider that if the GWC had an independent CFO, that they would be at liberty to make recommendations such as you should interrogate the basis for the service charge?
As in of the department?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
And is that something that you feel constrained about making as a recommendation to the GWC because you're also part of the department that sets the service charge?
No. I'm constrained in terms of resources and in terms of whether it's... I guess questions were not raised, and I did not think it was an inappropriate basis of calculation or escalation. So to the extent that I felt comfortable making the recommendation, I was satisfied that my assessment was appropriate. I made the recommendation internally, and it was then accepted and approved. And so again, to that extent, I believed that my basis for that for the changes that I've proposed were appropriate.
So what changes were they?
Sorry, the 5% escalation in more recent years.
And so who did you recommend that to?
Internally to the Director General.
So isn't this sort of the tension that, I mean, you're recommending that as CFO of the department to the Director General of the department, but you're also CFO of the GWC. Did you recommend that they accept a 5% increase?
Yes, that's the process of approving the budget.
I suppose the
Yes.
implication of the Commissioner's question is that
Yes.
you, perhaps if you're an independent CFO, you might advise the GWC that they should not accept a 5% increase, and that puts you in a position of tension or perhaps conflict in that you're trying to be a CFO of a department providing services and a CFO of a commission receiving services that are the same services, and you might have split loyalties, I think is the point.
To the extent that I was discharging my function to both entities, I believe I have a shared responsibility in that regard. I guess as I've articulated, my basis for escalation was based on output, and so I believed I had a far greater basis for escalation on the fee that could be charged. Simply escalating the fee based on that 40% allocation would have resulted in the fee increasing to something over $6 million in that year. I obviously thought that was an unreasonable increase to impose upon any client, albeit, I guess, an agency that I am CFO for. And I equally did not know or understand whether that level of output would have been maintained. So to the extent that I believed it was a form of escalation until output either petered out or maybe returned to more normal levels, that was the basis on which I proposed the escalation. Again, I did believe I had a basis for a far greater increase, but I thought I was operating, and I believe I was operating in the shared interests of both entities to not escalate the fee to an amount that would not be reasonable for the GWC to reimburse.
And are you aware of whether the increase in audits, inspections and investigations was the product of a request by the GWC to increase audit, inspection and investigation, or was it the product of the department producing more of those outputs?
I'm not aware.
So are you aware of whether there's any ability for the GWC to negotiate regarding the amount of output that the department produces in terms of audit and inspection and investigation, so that, for example, if it wanted to pay a lower service fee, it could request a lower number of inspections and audits and investigations?
To the extent that it would be requested, I can't see why we couldn't respond to that request as a department.
But as a matter of practice, have you ever received such a request from the GWC?
No.
So the essential process is that the figure is produced by the department and presented to the GWC, and during the time that you've been the CFO, that budget number has always been accepted. Is that right?
As I understand, yes.
No further questions. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Any cross-examination? Mr. Evans.
Can I just ask a couple of questions in clarification? Thank you, Commissioners. Mr. Adewale, my name's Evans. I act for the Gaming and Wagering Commission. Just to pick up on that last point that Mr. Sharp had taken you to, it is the fact that over the last number of budget cycles, the income and expenses of the Gaming and Wagering Commission have more or less been in balance. Is it not the case?
Sorry, have more or less, I'm
Been in balance. That
Been
has
in
been more or
balance,
less.
Sorry.
So roughly,
What
income
does
has roughly equal expenses in the last number of budget cycles.
I'd have to refer to documents, the annual
Can't answer
report.
from the top of your head, that's fine. If it were the case that, as you just indicated, there was an unreasonable increase in expenses, that is an increase from around $4 and a bit million to about $6 million, which you just contemplated, that would mean that either Gaming and Wagering Commission would either have to have reserves available to be drawn upon to pay that increase, or it'd have to increase its revenues. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, you make some reference to that in paragraph 54 of your statement about the potential for an increase in revenue. And just to understand what that means in practical sense, for the Gaming and Wagering Commission to increase its revenues, it's got to do one of two things, doesn't it? It either has to have the ability to increase external revenue sources. You understand that?
Yes.
And those external revenue sources are essentially taxes upon the activities of gambling,
Yes.
casino tax, and the Racing and Wagering Western Australia tax, and associated licence fees for activities, that is, licences for employees, licences for granting of permits and so on.
Yes.
So it's got to increase those by $1.5 million in the postulated case, or it has to obtain an appropriation from government.
That's correct.
And that's the appropriation which you refer to, I think, at paragraph 60, that you're not aware of a request for appropriation having been made by GWC. Now, to understand that appropriation, an additional appropriation, that would come through the department, wouldn't it?
We would coordinate the request on
Yes.
behalf of Gaming and Wagering Commission.
And that would require the appropriation to be approved by the Expenditure Review Commission, a committee of Cabinet,
That's
as part of the annual budgetary cycle,
That's
in
correct.
competition with all the other demands upon government's expenses
Absolutely.
and revenues. And it is the case, isn't it, that such appropriations are not easy to get.
Depending on the demands of government's reserves, absolutely, it can be complex and can't be guaranteed.
And one of the purposes of the machinery of government changes indeed was to reduce expenditure on departmental operations by consolidating the activities of departments, was it not?
Yes,
And that's one of the things which has contributed to the strains upon your resources, which you mentioned a
Absolutely.
moment ago.
yes.
Thank you. Paragraph 67, you mentioned the absence of a formal agreement, including a service level agreement between the department and GWC. Now, just to understand for those who may not otherwise know it, could you just explain what a service level agreement is?
A service level agreement would articulate the level of services that the department would be providing to the Gaming and Wagering Commission and to what extent those would be, or the basis upon which that would then be reimbursed.
So it would describe, A, the nature and extent of the services, but secondly, the quality of those services, that is timeliness of provision and so forth, the level of activity.
Yes,
It would provide for quality oversight in relation to that and review by the agency that acquires those services.
yes, depending on the sophistication of the document, yes.
And it would provide for a basis of charging either en globo or on an individual basis.
Yes,
And those are relatively common arrangements within governments for what I call major agencies and dependent agencies.
I'm not aware of the arrangements outside my agency, but it has been a process of development within DLGSC.
And in terms of charging for services, again, it's not uncommon for government departments to charge for services, is it? So they charge the public for services that are provided by government,
Yes,
and departments charge each other for services.
yes,
Indeed, Treasury has had a framework for the development of a costing methodology for some considerable time, has it not?
yes.
And that is currently, and this isn't in the record for the PCRC, but it can be if need be. I just lost it. Currently, the Costing and Pricing Government Services 7th edition, produced by Department of Treasury, current edition dated May 2020. You're familiar with that?
I'm familiar with it, yes.
Yes. And that contemplates, as the most accurate measure of services for the purpose of developing a costing model, what's known as the activity-based service model, does it not?
It's the recommended practice in state
That's
government,
right.
yes.
And that involves a relatively granular allocation of time and resource, including such things as capital assets, opportunity cost of capital, as well as human assets.
Yes.
And that's not used as part of the costing model that you've employed.
No.
Yes, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr Evans. Anyone else? No.
Ms Sherdawala, just one question following on from the entree about the Treasury costing guidelines. Given that those guidelines are in place and the deficiencies that we've talked about with charging by outputs or by history, does the department have any proposal to revise the arrangement, the charging arrangements between the department and the GWC at the moment?
To the extent that I'm directed either by the Director General or by the GWC, I'm more than happy to deliver a review of the costing and charging methodology.
But at this stage, there's nothing in train.
Currently, no.
Okay, thank you.
Ms Sherdawala, when you presented the breakdown of the calculation of services to GWC, did you receive a request to provide some additional information?
I believe there was one question in relation to providing a breakdown of the total cost of services that forms the base figure to which the percentage is then applied.
And when do you think you will be able to provide that to the GWC?
We're waiting for the total minutes of the meeting to come out. There were a range of questions around the financial reports and the service charge. So once the total number of questions out of that come out, we'll respond at the next meeting.
Won't surprise you to know I've got another question about the calculation of services. So my understanding is, from what you're saying, is that your recommendation for an increase was based on the audit outputs and the percentage that were a non-liquor, in effect.
Yes.
So the calculation up until that point where you've recommended an increase, what's your understanding of the extent to which the amount, the recoupment amount, as the witness before lunch described it, includes any value of non-audit and licensing costs of the department, what we might call corporate costs, or Mr. Evans, referred to resources like the IT system or whatever?
I do believe that in the total cost of services as it is calculated for the racing, gaming and liquor division, there is an allocation of corporate overhead as well to that figure.
So that was, in your view, would have been included in the initial 28.75% or whatever, or 30%, whatever.
28.7.
28.75.
It's included in the budgeted total cost of service to which the 28.75 is allocated. Yeah.
So, given that the machinery of government changes are supposed to save money for agencies, once the Department of Racing, Gaming and Liquor amalgamated to become the department it is today, has there been any decrease in those corporate costs that have been assigned to the GWC?
There hasn't been an observable decrease in the costs, but there hasn't been an observable decrease or a decrease in budget allocated to the racing game division.
Thank you. I didn't have any other questions. Ms. Seawood.
Just a couple, please, Commissioners. You were asked some questions about the audits and inspections, and you're basing your 5% increase on the numbers. And it was put to you that you would need to know information about the time taken for the audits and inspections, and that might alter your conclusion. Does the department keep any information about the time taken for audits and inspections that you could utilise to do that calculation?
I'm sorry, I'm not aware. That would be a question for the area that performs those functions.
And Mr. Evans asked you some questions about activity-based costings. Is that the basis upon which the costings are done currently for the RGL division and your calculations for the GWC?
Not specifically, no.
And is there a reason for that?
To the extent that we've maintained the same methodology that we believe was applied previously, for which I understood there to be a level of, I guess, activity-based allocation insofar as the racing, gaming and liquor divisions provides those services. And so to that extent, the total cost of that division relates to the activities then delivered at a very high level. I do believe that occurs, but certainly, I guess, if you're looking at specific activity-based either timesheets or looking at percentage of officers' times and such, then I don't believe that that is the case.
No further questions, thank you.
Thank you. Nothing arising, Mr.
Nothing
Chair.
further, thank you.
Ms Shedawala, your evidence has finished. We will leave the summons in place in case we have some further questions for you, but I doubt very much that you'll be required to return for further questioning. So thank you very much for your attendance and assistance today. We will adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.
All rise.
Thank you.